Ecologist Alex Konieczka, founder of the company Understory. Delighted to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks, Alanna. I'm very happy to be here.
Tell me about yourself. What does an ecologist do?
Sure. So I guess an ecologist is a difficult term because it incorporates a lot of different aspects, but I'll do my best. So as an ecologist, I study all aspects of nature. So that includes insects pollinating our flowers to the effects of climate change. So it's a very beautiful and diverse field that led me to work on some very specialised projects, since it is quite diverse. So as an example, maybe that will help anyone who's not sure what it means kind of get a good practical idea. I actually went to Kenya in Africa and worked with the local community there to study their invasive plant species that were having an effect on their crops. So I'm not sure if people know, but there's this cactus called opuntia, which is invasive, and it does spread very quickly. So I did propose management strategies to combat them. I also worked closer to home, so in Kilcoe and Wicklow, there's quite a lot of conservation projects that are really good. So at that one, I was a tern warden. So what I did was I protected the little tern nest and made sure that the eggs that are there hatch. And that was an interesting project because that means whenever you see a storm coming, you have to get up and you have to run and move the nest and then move them back. So it's quite an active job, but it's great and I love it.
From what you're describing, it's like you have to have knowledge from a lot of areas, like invasive species, we're talking like horticulture, and then like the animals or the insect life in a certain area and its context, like that's geography and a wide scope, I feel.
Absolutely, and I think you never get bored really. There's always more to learn, and the different projects that you get involved with expose you to different things, so it's very exciting, honestly. And there's all these people that spend their whole lives on one little area of ecology, so that's why it's quite a specialist area. So I would describe myself as more of a generalist person with some specific experience.
And it doesn't faze you, like, you know, it can be hard to possibly step into something that you think may require you to upskill and learn new knowledge, but you're saying that, like, as an ecologist, that's a really positive part of it, and it kind of fits your personality, your openness.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's always people out there who have that knowledge, so if you're not sure of anything, you can always approach those people. I don't think there's any point in trying to acquire knowledge on everything, because that is just too much person. So I think we should all kind of appreciate what we want to learn about and are interested in, and just gain that knowledge, and then, you know, reach out to other people that have other knowledge and just respect it and appreciate it and not feel inadequate in any way, because it is important to know so many things.
That's a good reminder, Alex. Like, just in general, even.
We can be open ourselves, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. You were talking to RTE, you did an interview with them, and you were telling them how you started your own company, Understory, in order to rebel against the current make and waste model of business. Could you speak a bit about this?
Of course. As I was growing up, I did see that a lot of my beloved nature spots started to disappear at a very fast rate, and I think that's common for everyone, really. We saw the quick urban development, and the focus was, and probably still is, on that urban growth, so oftentimes at the expense of our natural habitats. And I came to realize that this kind of short-sighted attitude is also linked to the linear make and waste model, where items are just produced constantly and they're not sustainable. So they do use virgin materials and fossil fuels, and unfortunately end up in our trash quite shortly after. They don't have a long life cycle at all, even though the investment is quite big to produce them. And then again, even a proportion of that waste isn't recyclable. So it's a little confusing in that way. So I found it Understory because I wanted to prove to myself and others that it is possible to be 100% circular. And circular means reusing materials and not creating any waste. So I wanted to explore the potential of waste with my own unique spin on it, and that's why I created the idea of using reclaimed materials to create products that specifically support wildlife and connect people with nature. So the truth is that like big changes start from small actions, and each one of them is meaningful, and every one of us makes so many decisions a day, and it kind of incorporate that into it as well. I'm kind of big on mental health. You know, a lot of the time with the environmental movement, it can be quite negative and pessimistic sometimes, and it can be quite hard to work on it. So I guess what I naturally do is I'm quite an optimistic person, and I try to incorporate that too, so that it's not a negative conversation. It's more of an empowering movement.
Yeah, and I think you're reminding us that as of late, you know, with sea swimming, forest bathing and all this stuff, we definitely are going back to nature and wanting to reconnect there. So you're bringing, I think, that positive spin on it to waste products. Yeah, and we know ourselves from, you know, when we're younger, reduce, reuse, recycle, and this kind of circular way of going about things. I know you're talking about it at a much larger scale, but at least it in some way, I think it does plant a seed in us as a reminder.
Yes, and actually you mentioned the R's, so they've actually expanded that to maybe 7 R's now. So it's rethink, reduce, recycle, it's got refuse, it just keeps expanding, which kind of shows our growth as well.
Yeah, we would have been back in the original kind of green schools days where they were only kind of still coming up with them. But as you said, yeah, they say that's not enough now. I'm not surprised that it's getting longer.
Absolutely.
General side, have you always wanted to start your own business, or was this more about protecting the environment and tackling climate change?
So I actually dreamt about opening my business, but I always said it was once I retire, and I wasn't specific. I wasn't specific on what it was going to be. It was just something I always wanted to do since I was very little. But in my teens, I was always torn between art, biology and psychology as a career, and I thought I was way too sensitive to be an artist. I thought I would never get enough leaving cert points to study psychology, and so I was just left with biology then, which made it a bit simpler. So I spent some time happily working in that field, but after a while I just came to realize that there's no point acting like I'm a horse with blinders on and like I can't look other ways. So I learned that we're not one-dimensional, and I loved the idea of being able to create something that's truly tailored to me, and that's kind of how Understory came to be. And of course, like, protecting the environment was a massive part of it, because that's just kind of who I am, so I couldn't separate the two. So it kind of evolved as I kind of went through life. I was at companies where my values weren't really met, or I felt like it wasn't really me, or I had to compromise myself sometimes, and that kind of led me to just be like, actually, you know what, I'm just going to do my own thing. And again, that was kind of inspired by, I guess, a life-changing moment where I got sick and I was told, oh, that was close, like, you probably should have not waited that long to come into the hospital, and I had septic shock, which is quite a serious thing.
Oh my God.
So it was very far down the line, my hair started falling out, but anyway, I was just like, actually, you know what, I shouldn't be waiting, and I shouldn't be limiting myself. I should just go for it, even if it doesn't feel like it's the right time. So yeah, I kind of evolved, to be honest. I never really planned for this to happen.
I'm glad that it kind of gave you this word to have the get up and go, but God, I'm sorry to hear about that. That sounds like it was very intense.
It was intense, but I think it was well worth it, and for what I got out of it, I think it definitely helps, and it kind of hurries you. It just makes you think, like, why be patient, you know? Like, there isn't a time that you have on the planet that you know, like, for sure you're going to get, so you just kind of get more motivated, which is great, because I was a massive procrastinator.
Yeah. Sure, look, don't we all have it a bit, but I'm glad as well that you stuck to your values. You know, I kind of didn't forget that we're having these thoughts and feelings before, and you stuck to it, you got it started, and you followed it through.
Yeah, I'm glad as well. I think I'm at a place now where I guess I'm the happiest that I've been, because I am doing things that I believe in, and I'm able to use my expertise and my skills, and I meet people that inspire me all the time. So I'm very grateful to be where I am at the moment.
And very creative, I would feel like. I could see how you did have desire to be an artist, you know, because you're designing. And could you talk about some of the items that you make from reclaimed materials? to connect people with nature, as we were speaking about?
Sure. So I guess I see the material first, and then I decide what I do with it. But in the past, I made bee boxes. So I think people know them. They're also called bee hotels.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people forget that there's other bee species out there as well. It's not just honeybees. There's so many different species we have, and we kind of need to protect them a bit more so, if I'm not being controversial here, than the honeybee, because they're managed. So the other bees have a tougher time. But anyway, I love talking about bees, so I'm going to stop myself there. I make other things as well. So even from paper waste, I make handmade notebooks. So I make my own paper. I used champagne bottles to create plant pots before. I make terrariums from vintage glass. And strangely enough, a lot of this glass was going to the landfill. But I also find things that are quite unique. So I think I have about 3 boxes full of lab glass that was going to be recycled, if not just straight to the landfill, because it's quite specific. I guess it's limited on what the recycling centres can do for certain items, even if they are deemed recyclable. Sometimes there's something in them that doesn't allow it to go through the normal process, the conventional recycling centres. So I have 3 boxes of that, for example, and they can be used for plant propagation or any kind of project like that. So I work with a lot of different types of waste, and usually I put a spin on it to make it about nature and wildlife, but it does keep expanding. I keep being exposed to new waste, and I guess, like, as an artist, you always kind of evolve as well, so you start seeing things differently and coming up with new ideas as well.
Yeah, you're learning an awful lot through the making of this stuff, because I knew that what you're putting in your recycling bin, when it actually gets to the centre and it's sorted, that it doesn't always make it where you'd like to think it would go. You know, so through your discoveries and working with the waste products, you're actually realising that there's a lot that goes into whether something can be recycled or not, and you're actually following it on its path. You know, again, this kind of circular thing, like you're actually following its route a bit and what's going to happen to it.
Yes, absolutely, and it's not an easy process, so it's kind of good that I'm able to go deep, and I guess I get very inspired while I'm working with something to be like, oh, what's the history of this? Where would it go next? And I get very enthused about things, and I'm able to then convey that to people, you know, that are in my community or follow me on social media, so that they don't have to do that themselves. They don't have to spend hours of their time doing it. And so it's nice in a way as well.
Yeah, and there's that kind of gap in the market, I guess, also, that no one is doing this quite to the extent that you are, and I think you're kind of creating new knowledge here, you know, like really realising the scale of how much we don't. There's no connected thinking really here, or it's too, recycling centres are great and everything, but they're dealing with such a large amount of stuff coming through that they probably don't have time to really, you know, if they deem something very quickly is not recyclable, it needs to be moved on quickly to the next place, and that is the landfill.
Yes, that's true. And even when I do my litter cleanups, a lot of people, and I don't want to put a negative spin on this, but a lot of people, when you put something in a bag after a cleanup, it just gets recycled. But even when you have those bags, it usually just goes to the landfill, and it's like that extra step that you just need to consider, like what actually happens after I put it in a bag, you know.
Yeah.
It does get complicated, but it's kind of important that we do question it a bit more, then we can act on it.
Where can we get more information about your company, Understory, and browse products as well?
So at the moment, everything happens on Instagram, so it's Understory_IE. So that's where most of my stuff happens. So I have a lot of stories where I show the behind the scenes of working with products. I also have the Facebook page and Twitter, so all the social media. I am making a website, so that should hopefully be launched soon, which will make it much easier for people to get my information. And I also have a community group WhatsApp. And again, I'm always checking my emails, so if anyone wants to get in touch through that, you're more than welcome. I love hearing from people, whether that's just to, ask a question or maybe collaborate. So I'd be more than happy to connect through that.
Great stuff, Alex. Well, it was wonderful speaking with you, and thanks a million for giving us your time and coming onto the programme.
Thank you so much. Thank you.